Who are you then?
I'm the Doctor.
Me too, if I ever pass my exams.
David Tennant had taken over the role of the Doctor, turning the successful revival of Doctor Who into a massive hit, bringing with it an entirely new generation of viewers with very dry eyes.
Don't blink.
For the revival's third season, the 10th Doctor would meet a new companion and meet up with one of his oldest foes, Doctor Who Series 3.
I probably won't, but even if I did, then I couldn't. I wouldn't want to.
The stairs.
What about the
They're right behind you.
Russell T Davies' new Doctor Who was going from strength to strength. Viewers loved David Tennant, and the series' popularity was riding high.
Oh, look down there, you got a little shop. I like a little shop.
Never mind that.
For the third series, they'd have to keep things turning over with another year of exciting episodes, blending the silly, the serious, and surreal, a combination henceforth known as Silurilius. At the end of Series 2, Billie Piper had left the show, and as would become an all-too-common crutch for the series showrunners, her character, Rose Tyler, was written out in an insanely convoluted way that meant she was alive and well and living with her family in a parallel universe, but the Doctor was prevented from ever seeing her again, otherwise there would be dire universe-shattering consequences. Of course, that all-powerful block would eventually crumble like a New Year's resolution to quit dunking biscuits in tea. So, you start the season with the Doctor moping as if the previous companion had died. But of course they weren't dead. They were sort of dead, but not dead, like that centipede in the bathroom at 3 AM who refuses to die.
A happy prime is a number that's both happy and prime. Now type it in.
I don't know, talk about dumbing down. Don't they teach recreational mathematics anymore?
David Tennant this season is in full manic explosion mode, talking like a sped up disclaimer at the end of a commercial for a new medication treating urinary tract infections. Stingy pee no more. If pain persists, please seek medical attention. Also, your balls might explode. And then there's the hair product. We must mention the hair product. Never has the Doctor's hairstyling choices been so, obvious. By the end of this run, if there was a poll about the best Doctor or the favourite Doctor, and David Tennant wasn't in the top two, then you can tell you were looking at a very old issue of Doctor Who magazine, the one which you found at the back of your cupboard, you know, the one with the pull-out poster of the Brigadier looking concerned. David Tennant wasn't a complete unknown when he took on the role, but by this series he'd become a household name, and from this point would forever dare any actor to take on the title role after him to speak slowly. Our story today begins with the 2006 Christmas special, The Runaway Bride, a show that would introduce a companion, but not just yet. Donna Noble had magically appeared in the TARDIS just as she was walking down the aisle at her own wedding, which leads the Doctor to once again face off against the robot mercenary Santas and this giant spider lady, the Rachnos Empress.
I'm in my wedding dress! Yes, you look lovely! Come on!
The Runaway Bride is mainly a screwball comedy, something that Russell T Davies did better than anyone else.
What, there's like a secret base hidden underneath a major London landmark?
I know. Unheard of.
It has bitingly sarcastic comedy, but with heart.
I mean, macrobining your DNA with the interior matrix. Maybe our genetics. What was that for?
Get me to the church!
Donna is a loud woman from Chiswick who deals with the new universe of aliens and spaceships in her own way, by venting her frustrations loudly.
Santa's a robot!
Catherine Tate was a popular comedian who at the time was starring in a popular sketch comedy show called The Catherine Tate Show.
Shazam! What did I do this time?
Are you enjoying this?
Donna is the real deal, quickly spotting the Doctor's heartbreak over Rose. Well, that is, once she got past her initial impressions of him being a serial killer.
How many women have you abducted?
The Doctor offers Donna a chance to travel with him, and she nopes out, mainly because, well, you know, this shit is scary. That's a pity, but Donna would be back again. And again. This Christmas special has a big grand score by Murray Gold, whose work on the show is performed more and more by an orchestra, which really does give the show a rich texture. The special effects here hold up relatively well. Well, you either think the Rachnos is terrible in every way, or you think the Rachnos is one of the better looking creatures we've seen up to this point. I don't think it's necessarily a great villain, but it's one that you have no major problem with it being destroyed by the Doctor, even over Donna's objections. A lot of people hate the Rachnos. I don't have that much of a problem with it. It's also possible that people's morbid fear of spiders is at play here. Now, you might be able to tell by my accent, I live in a place where familiarity with large spiders is commonplace. I mean, you can't transport much furniture in the back of a small family hatchback, which is why when we visit IKEA, we often take a trained spider to use as a beast of burden. The third season was broadcast a few months later from March of 2007. Smith and Jones starts with an introduction to Martha Jones and her family situation. Martha's a medical student training in a hospital, which ends up on the moon. Mad, I know. There's this one patient with 2 hearts who had stopped her on the street earlier that morning. Mad, I know. And then there are these rhinoceros creatures, the Jadoon, who are hunting down this old lady for some reason. Perhaps she didn't pay her license fee. Or perhaps she was an alien fugitive draining people like a vampire. Mad, I know. Martha isn't fazed like everyone else around her. She tries to work out what's going on logically, which does impress the Doctor no end. It's a great setup for her character, and for once we got to see the Doctor treating his first adventure with a potential new companion like a job interview. And even then he strings her along for the next few episodes, almost like that conversation a month-to-month contract employee gets.
Look, Frank, we want to make you full-time, but this has been a tough month, and we've been getting static from headquarters over costs, and so we'll just keep you on for another month and see where we are then. Frank? Frank? Are you there, Frank?
The Doctor tries not to let on about his feelings of loss over Rose, while Martha mentions her cousin lost at the Battle of Canary Wharf. How does the Doctor trying to dance away the radiation work for you? The Jadoon scanning people and then marking them with a Sharpie? Well, I like that. But by the end of the episode, Martha decides that travelling with the Doctor seems marginally less fraught than dealing with her family's chicken shit drama.
Not that you're replacing her.
Never said I was.
Just one trip. To say thanks, you get one trip, then back home.
Freema Agyeman hits the ground running. As Martha, she's not a pushover character. She's someone who's curious about all the things that she will see with the Doctor. As a doctor in training herself, she's got that little bit more scientific curiosity about the universe.
Yeah.
Sure?
Yeah.
Do you want to go back in?
No way. I mean, we could die any minute, but all the same, it's beautiful.
And also after a kiss for, purely scientific, story-bound reasons, you understand, to transfer DNA to, well, anyway, Martha is smitten with the Doctor. The Shakespeare Code mixes jokes about how Shakespeare got his best lines and witchcraft. But it's aliens using science, but it's witchcraft somehow to replenish their species again anyway. It's kind of fun to watch the Doctor and Martha partying like it's 1599.
Hey, nonny.
Shakespeare enthusiasts were either having to change their pants from all the excitement or having to change their pants out of frustration. But either way, as the bard may have said in an off day, this is the shit.
To be or not to be. Oh, that's quite good.
You should write that down.
Maybe not. Bit pretentious.
The Doctor is oblivious to Martha's feelings as he treats her like a one-off temp companion for an episode while he drones on and on about Rose Tyler, or as Martha Jones knows her, Rose Bloody Tyler. These witches are manipulating Shakespeare into adding some dialogue into his new play, Love's Labour's Won, which amounts to an incantation or spell. It's magic, but it's science, but it's magic, but it's science. We'll just hand wave that away and say, yes, words have the power to make things appear. And Shakespeare being so good and stuff with words and shit and everything like that, he's a no-brainer for the witch chicks and what they get up to and stuff and shit and everything like that.
And why are you telling them that?
This lot's still got one foot in the Dark Ages. If I tell them the truth, they'll panic and think it was witchcraft.
Okay, what was it then?
Witchcraft.
We all have the power to create physical things out of words. Usually it just results in facial bruising and a trip to the emergency room with an ice pack in your lap. I've always thought this is a fun knockabout episode to see Martha getting her first taste at time travel. It also shows how confident the show's makers were with creating the sort of vistas that only a few years previously would have been almost exclusively the province of major motion pictures. Shakespeare here is a thirsty hornbag when it comes to Martha, and to date has been one of the more cheekier portrayals of a historical figure in the series. Queen Elizabeth's appearance at the end of the story sort of ties in a little bit with her appearance in the series later on. The play featured in the story, a sequel to Love's Labour's Lost, isn't completely made up, but is based on a play that may have been finished and performed but no longer exists. Look, the BBC videotape archives were apparently doing their thing even in the 1600s, hundreds of years before the corporation was even founded. We had seen Shakespeare in Doctor Who before, and we'd see the Doctor bragging about having a hand in some of the bard's works.
I recognize the handwriting.
Shakespeare's.
No, mine.
but this was the first time we'd seen them in the same room at the same time. Shakespeare invented many words and phrases used in English. Words can be a type of immortality. If you've ever read an article about some societal trend that you may be familiar with, and then the journalist says it's called something, but it's a word you've never heard elsewhere in relation to said trend, you know it's probably the journalist inventing the term and hoping like hell that somebody else starts using it. Which is why I like to invent words to use in my videos, in the hope that they'll go viral. There's festuarian, presecally mippengrate, and melomenomenon. Gridlock sees a return to New York, but at a later point in time than the last time the Doctor was there. This is all about flying cars stuck in traffic, which seems rather slight and comedic for the most part. And then it takes a darker turn towards the end, which would be sort of a calling card for Doctor Who by now. We have Ardal O'Hanlon as a cat. He was a big star, but he'll always be Father Dougal to me. We have the Doctor jumping between cars manned by all manner of goofy characters in trying to find the kidnapped Martha Jones. The traffic jam has made the folks in the cars become a community. Oh, and there are de-evolved Macra to worry about. Of course, it's all fun and games until somebody brings a hand grenade to apple bobbing. Almost everybody in New York is dead, and the Doctor is needed to open up the motorway exit for those stuck in the traffic jam. There's also the face of Bo. Oh, and the cat nun from last season. Bo, face of, will of course sort of pop up later in the series as part of an unexpected revelation. The Doctor sits down with Martha to explain everything, detailing parts of the Time War, well, the bits that the series is cool with us knowing about at this point.
Where did you start?
Battery Park. It's 5 miles back.
You travelled 5 miles in 12 years.
I think he's a bit slow.
Daleks in Manhattan and evolution of the Daleks, well, it does what it says on the box. There are Daleks in Manhattan over 2 epic parts.
Well, we're not going to leave Manhattan.
Set in the 1930s during the depths of the Great Depression, the Empire State Building is still being constructed, but in its shadow is a shantytown in Central Park where Captain Panaka and Middle Spider-Man are hanging out. The latter, of course, slumming it in a BBC show while waiting for his big audition.
I got one song and a backstreet review, and that's only because Heidi Chicane broke her ankle, which had nothing to do with me, whatever anybody says.
There's the showgirl Tallulah, who's missing her boyfriend Laszlo, who's been turned into a half pigman. Then there's the last surviving Dalek quartet. I mean, they're a quartet because there are 4 of them, but not this sort of quartet.
Lights go out and I can't be saved. Tides I tried to swim against have brought me down upon my knees. I beg, I beg, I beg and plead, singing.
The Empire State Building is the home base for the Dalek Awesome Foursome, and their leader, Sek, decides to meld with their minion Diagoras to make, well, it's a Dalek-human hybrid.
I am a human Dalek.
We also have a song and dance number because why the hell not? And we have Pigmen because why the hell not? There's the Dalek attack on Hooverville, and yes, it's Andrew Garfield, the Timothy Dalton of Spider-Man. Unless that should be Timothy Dalton is the Amazing Spider-Man of James Bond. Look, it doesn't really matter since Dalton will end up in Doctor Who soon enough.
The cleverest Dalek ever, and look what you've done to him.
This Dalek two-parter has a lot going for it, but a few things going against it. A sea of British actors putting on variable attempts at oldie-timey-wimey American accents. Some handle it more convincingly than others. I don't think anybody liked the human Dalek hybrid, since they've not been heard from since. It's not the first time the Daleks have had humanoid elements merged into their psyche, but since we're talking about a show set in New York, a baseball metaphor is appropriate. We're not talking about grabbing your crotch and spitting, more it's a swing and a miss.
Don't imagine people ain't gonna stare.
Lazarus Experiment gives occasional Doctor Who writer, Sherlock co-creator and ex-League of Gentlemen star Mark Gatiss a guest starring role in a story about some old fart who's trying out a process to make himself younger.
I am 76 years old.
But instead turns into a monster.
You think I'd waste another lifetime on you?
And then he turns into an actual monster. The storyline of a man who undergoes an experimental process but things don't go so well is the origin story of dozens of superheroes and supervillains. Also not a particularly new plot idea for Doctor Who. It's just been done much better elsewhere. Oh, he's dead, oh, and then he comes back to life. And then we have a big climax in a cathedral. So very, very middling. What this episode does actively contribute is that it starts to bring to the foreground this season's background plot thread.
Mr. Saxon wants to be sure they like what they see.
The season arc had become, for better or worse, an expected part of most seasons of Doctor Who since its 2005 rebirth. It has to be said, most of them are terrible, they feel tacked on, and you more or less forget about them until like one episode towards the end of the series has some compilation flashback. Season 3 probably has it integrated into the plot much better than most of the story arcs. We'd been hearing on and off about somebody called Mr. Saxon, and now we're starting to get a sense that whoever he may be, he's not necessarily got the Doctor's best interests at heart. Oops, what a giveaway. The Doctor had a decent relationship with the Tylers, but Martha's family, particularly her mother Francine, are not pleased with this mysterious fella. And now we have representatives of Mr. Saxon suggesting to Martha's mum Francine that her daughter is increasingly in danger the longer she stays with the Doctor. 42 is an episode directed by the classic show's best director and the new series' dullest showrunner. It's a puzzle show, supposedly in real time, where some folks on a powered-down spaceship need to crack a bunch of security codes in order to restart the whatever, while a creature is killing the crew for whatever. The crew was illegally mining a star that was in fact a living entity. It's a decent enough episode, maybe just a little forgettable when you look at the season as a whole. Martha is now able to ring her mum anywhere in the universe, and one fraught call during a crisis plays into the hands of the people manipulating Francine.
Mr. Saxon will be very grateful.
Then we get a two-part story, Human Nature and Family of Blood. The Doctor and Martha are in some crisis before suddenly we're thrust into new territory. The Doctor has no idea who he is and is living the life of John Smith, a teacher in a public school in 1913, while Martha watches over him working as a maid in the school. John Smith has vivid dreams of some form of space adventure, which he tries to explain while he awkwardly courts the school's matron, Nurse Joan.
Where did you learn to draw?
Gallifrey.
Is that in Ireland?
Yes, it must be, yes.
The school is a breeding ground for quality people, which is actually another way of saying assholes. One of their number has psychic visions, while another has been taken over by one of the aliens who've come looking for the Doctor. The story unfolds nicely. Martha's trying to keep things together, while John Smith is trying to make something happen with the nice widow.
Nurse Redfern, might I invite you to the village dance this evening?
This episode introduces the concept of the Chameleon Arch, which is a fob watch that stores the Doctor's persona and memories. It's the only way to get him back to normal.
Rewrites my biology. Literally changes every single cell in my body. I've said it's human.
And wouldn't you know it, it's gone missing. 4 aliens known as the Family have taken over a student, a little girl, a landowner, and Martha's friend. They're on a clock, so they will kill anyone to get the Doctor. Thing is, once he learns his true identity, John Smith just doesn't want to let go. The Chameleon Arch would be a thing that you'd think would appear in just one episode and never be heard from again. But no, thankfully it hasn't been abused too much. But when you see one of these things in Doctor Who, you know something's going down. Or something's up. Me, I prefer just to say, shit's just got real. Of course, this is the show with all those people you know from other series and movies. Harry Lloyd is creepy as hell, though he doesn't end up dipped in gold. Another Game of Thrones actor, Thomas Brodie Sangster, is good and all, but the kid from Love Actually will always be the kid from Love Actually. And of course from Spaced is Jessica Hines, a big star in her own right, and she's amazing as Joan. Era appropriate even when era appropriate is inappropriate. Poor Martha has to admit her feelings for the Doctor, and even though she doesn't have to put up with many stories about Rose, Bloody, Tyler,
because I love him to bits,
now she has to sit and watch the Doctor fall in love with Joan. This is a great story, and it's my favourite of the season. I could gush over this two-parter for minutes, but I'd run out of clean pans 3 days before laundry day. So I'll just say there's some really special episodes that perhaps will be overshadowed by the very next story, which is an even more special episode, but about as atypical an episode of Doctor Who as you will find without realising you're probably watching an episode of The Twilight Zone.
It's not like I had any control over it.
He didn't just make himself human. He made himself an idiot.
Blink is a landmark episode in many ways, so let's just get started.
Don't blink. Don't even blink. Blink and you're dead. They are fast, faster than you could believe. Don't turn your back. Don't look away, and don't blink.
Sally Sparrow finds her best friend has disappeared and then sends her letters from the past, and then Sally becomes entwined in a mystery involving creepy statues of angels that appear to move when you're not looking.
It's up to you now.
What am I supposed to do?
Kerry Mulligan shines as Sally Sparrow. Yes, this season's episodes must have been used on an awful lot of the guest cast's show reels.
1969, that's where you're talking from.
Afraid so.
But you're replying to me.
You can't know exactly what I'm going to say 40 years before I say it.
38?
Sally's been sent messages from the past via various means, graffiti, letters and DVD Easter eggs. Sally even meets a cop from the Bill spin-off Thirsty Squad.
Why?
Because life is short and you are hot. Drink.
And then finally she puts it all together, where she manages to send the TARDIS back to the Doctor.
The Doctor tricked them. They're looking at each other. They're never gonna move again.
Blink is hailed as one of the greatest episodes of Doctor Who, which I suppose it is, even though the Doctor and Martha are barely in it. Yes, this is a Doctor Light episode, a show written to feature the main characters in just a handful of scenes in order to keep the series' production on schedule. I've seen people online mention Blink as an episode that you could show to somebody in order to interest them in the series, which is absolutely terrible advice since it's so unlike 99.9% of Doctor Who episodes. You'd get the same reaction if you showed them an episode of Band of Brothers or The Young and the Restless, and then say to them, oh, well, if you like this, you should totally watch Doctor Who. Well, really, it's nothing like this. Blink will have many positive knock-on effects for the show in following seasons, and a few unwelcome ones, namely doubling down on puzzle monster shows, and of course inconsistent and indeed overuse of the Weeping Angel. This show also presages a general move of the show towards dark fantasy of a show like Sapphire and Steel, which is a great show, but I like it because it's not Doctor Who. Doctor Who was always full of high concepts, but Blink is a show that asks, how high? It's also the show that would break Doctor Who's vocabulary.
It's more like a big ball of wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey stuff.
Stephen Moffat. Now, I love a lot of Stephen Moffat's work, and yet loathe some of his work. Even so, he still remains one of Doctor Who's best writers and most creative writers. No one comes up with ridiculous and convoluted yet utterly entertaining ideas like this man. He's hand-wavier than an excited child in the third row of an SUV waving to everybody on the freeway. Blink is his finest work, where the silly ideas manage to hang together like a pair of loved-up sloths. This won't always be the case with his work, but Blink is absolutely excellent. There's a lot of heart here, but thanks to the nature of the Weeping Angels, there will be only dry eyes in the house. Utopia plays like a single episode, but it's really the first part of a 3-episode arc to end the season. Captain Jack Harkness tags along as the Doctor and Martha head to the far future, to the year 100 trillion, a date with so many zeros you'd think you'd landed on the wrong aircraft carrier. Humanity is desperate to leave their refuge in a giant spaceship, but their scientific advisor and inventor seems not to know what the hell's going on, or even how to light the blue touch paper. Derek Jacobi is great as the absent-minded Professor Yana, but he's got a secret, and it turns out it's quite a big deal. And as we said earlier, shit just got real.
I am the master.
Yes, Jacobi does go a little over the top, but then he regenerates into a younger version of himself and steals the TARDIS. While all of this is happening, the Doctor and Jack swap stories to catch each other up on things like Torchwood, and Jack more or less being immortal after Rose Bloody Tyler brought him back to life. The regressive folks with the teeth are forgotten about as quickly as possible, because this episode really wants to concentrate on the bits it wants to show. The big ticket item is reintroducing the Master. Oh, and this kid won a contest on Blue Peter. The only thing I won on Blue Peter was a $5 at Newmarket, and then the man with the rifle showed up. The sound of drums sees Jack, Martha and Doctor travel back to the then present day, just after the election of Harold Saxon as the UK Prime Minister. Except 3 guesses as to who that turns out to be.
Thank you. One and all. You ugly, fat-faced bunch of wet, snivelling traitors.
Yes, quite.
With the Master as Prime Minister, which is a trope that echoes a popular comic book idea of supervillains ascending to a top job, is able to mobilise almost the entire country to hunt down the Doctor's party. The Master is, well, look, he's very good at hypnotising people. And he has a perception filter, and he's got telepathic satellites. Now, it's very important that you remember that they are telepathic satellites. With all of this, he's able to paper over the dodgy parts of his CV.
I made my choice. I'm sorry. For better or for worse.
Saxon announced first contact with a race of aliens he calls the Toclophane, except they don't exist.
Planet Earth!
Now, right. Careful! Martha, listen to me. Do as I say.
Martha's sister, father and mother are arrested, and then there's the big reveal which leads to the Doctor's capture on the floating aircraft carrier, the Valiant. They used the Valiant since Cloudbase was in use hosting a Tupperware party. Sound of Drums is a fantastic episode of Doctor Who. It ratchets up the tension with each scene. John Sim is just so over the top as a distorted mirror of Tennant's restless doctor, sent mad by the drums in his head, which of course is the same rhythm as... The Master is so hyperactive, it's almost like he's a game show host of a show like The Wheel of Methamphetamine.
Laser screwdriver. Who'd have Sonic? And the good thing is, he's not dead for long. I get to kill him again! Master!
The Doctor is aged up by the Master's laser screwdriver, which incorporates Lazarus technology. I mean, this is an era of cheap CG. But why CG when you have access to the ultimate special effect, David Tennant? We have this makeup job of old Tennant, and it's really nice work, much better than the same effect for Lazarus earlier this season. We've seen the Doctor aged up before, and we'll see him aged up again. But good makeup is only half the effect, the other half is the performance, and David Tennant is remarkably effective. You can almost smell the mothballs and stale brown ale. Martha ends the episode vowing to fix all of this. I mean, I really hope they stick the landing because that was such an enjoyable episode. Actually, it's 2 great episodes building up to what looks like an incredibly satisfying conclusion. Yeah, shit. Look, my notes here say, Last of the Time Lords, but while I was watching this episode, there was excitement as Martha travels the world, spreading the word of the Doctor.
His name is the Doctor.
And then the Doctor tries to save the Master, and then there's the Doctor trying to talk everyone out of shooting the Master, before finally his abused wife asks for a quickie divorce. So just what was the thing that made me write, Oh, that's right. The Doctor's aged up again and turned into... Well, the popular term is Gollum Doctor. And this was 2007, so Gollum on a TV budget was never going to be anything other than whatever the hell this is. Oh dear. Then there's the other bit, the waving of the hands to get out of the corner that Russell T Davies had written himself into. We've tortured the population of the Earth, killed millions, seen the Toclafane revealed as cannibalized human survivors who found nothing in Utopia. It's so very dark. But if we something the Master's telepathic satellites and something Martha has been everywhere big noting the Doctor and everybody just says his name.
Telepathic field, binding the whole human race together with all of them, every single person on Earth thinking the same thing at the same time, and that word is Doctor.
Then somehow he is restored, a cage disappears, oh, and of course he's hovering. Well, like my investment in rocketry, what goes up must come down.
Planet Earth restored. None of it happened. The rocket, the terror, it never was.
Last of the Time Lords shows the show shitting the bed like somebody with food poisoning the day before the new mattress they ordered on Black Friday turns up. I mean, if you can just lie in your own mess for a few hours until the doorbell rings, then sure. As they're the only Time Lords left, the Doctor offers the Master a partnership of sorts to be his keeper, though I have no idea how that would work, since any reunion the Doctor has with certain of his companions, you know, the ones whose family the Master had murdered, would be just a tad awkward. We've all had those tense Christmas dinners, like the one where Auntie Beryl announced her intention to build a ski resort on Krakatoa. And then Martha decides after what she and her family had just been through, that she's done, she's had enough of the Doctor not reciprocating her feelings toward her, and that she was fed up with living in the shadow of Rose Bloody Tyler. Good for her. When you look at all the companions created by Davies and his successor Stephen Moffat, Martha is the only one who's allowed to make a choice and not be sent into an alternate dimension, mind-wiped, sent to the past, forgotten by the Doctor and turned into, look, spoilers. Basically bullshit barriers so the Doctor can never see them again and mope about them. Martha will of course come back for a few appearances here and there. You know, her not being fake dead makes that an absolute doddle.
I forgive you.
Here at the Stam Fine Ministry of Doctor Who Reviews YouTube Division Borderline Comedy Office, we like this season more often than we didn't. Of course, there is a scene here and there, like extras in the Poseidon Adventure, that goes overboard, but it doesn't dampen our enthusiasm for the show in the slightest when you have such strong episodes.
You're completely mad.
You're right. I looked after one shoe.
Barefoot on the moon.
Okay, so those few ordinary episodes aside, this was a great season with more good to great episodes than usual, and even the lesser episodes tended to be middling rather than outright terrible. The last episode, oh man, let's not start that again. The last 3 episodes are a roller coaster ride. There are some good bits, but by the end you're screaming for a refund after the kid behind you has been filling your hoodie with the hot dog, hamburger and pizza combo that he had for lunch. Everything is explained, everything is laid out there for you. But like any fiction, you really need to accept that this is possible within this universe. So yes, in Doctor Who, anything is possible.
This was a trial I'm making a note here, huge success. It's hard to overstate my satisfaction. What? And it's not its fault, data make a beautiful line, and we're out of beta, but releasing on time. So I'm glad I got burned. Think of all the things we learned from the people who are still alive.
Doctor Who of 2007 is a youthful show, but like every era of the series, it's aiming at a younger audience. And in this case, it's an audience who wants piss and vinegar from their doctor, rather than an audience lining their front room with dozens of vinegar bottles filled with their own piss. Series 3 had a great run of stories with some of the franchise's very best episodes. Martha unfortunately was gone, so we'd need another companion. But first we'd have a Christmas special, and like last year, that leaves the series free to bring in a one-off companion. I wonder who that's going to end up being. Then there was Season 4, the point where Russell T Davies started to think about moving on from the show. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, leave a comment below, or check out some of our other videos. Oh, and you can blink now.